Am I alive? Okay. All right, I appear to be here. Happy Monday. Nice to be here. Can I type here? Hold on a second. Just doing some. Notice I got these old person glass holders. I need to make some better ones, but I didn't want those like sports ones that hook on at the end. So I got these. We'll see how it works. I guess. Sorry, I'm a little bit bedraggled, bedazzled. Bedazzled, not the right word. Kind of a rainy day today. Still at Studio B. We'll be going home or to the city anyway tomorrow, hopefully in the AM. That's my plan. Probably won't do any streaming or anything because Veterans Day. We'll see how that goes. Anyhow, ArcaneCon, another grand success. Just want to tip of the cap to Brian and the rest of the folks who put that together. They do a really nice job. It's a really nice con. There's a few of these. Lucky enough to be, I guess. I hate to say I didn't make it to ArcaneCon, unfortunately, and I felt very jealous of Daniel. Came home saying, how much fun he had, and I missed that one. And I was gonna say, like, all these little cons that are kind of within range of my house, and I couldn't say that ClareCon's not that close. It's what, an 8-hour drive, but whatever. It's within. But anyway, just having all these cons that are kind of near enough. It's not a. I don't know how long it takes to get to GaryCon from New York. I don't think it's quite that far. It can't be. I have to imagine it cannot be that far. But we've got, EcclesiaCon, Page, PAX Unplugged, PAX East, even ShireCon, ArcaneCon, if you want to push it, ClareCon, just in terms of distance. And especially these smaller cons. Look, I like PAX Unplugged. They really helped me out when I was kind of trying to make inroads into doing this stuff. But it's a big con. It's got, I don't want to say big con problems, but it's definitely. Let's see if I can turn down this light a little bit. It's super bright in my face. It's a big con, and if you've gone to a big con, you kind of know how they are. ArcaneCon is at a really good size, though they've just about grown out of their current building. That was maybe the one thing that was apparent this year. I guess. Let me break things down. So I'll do just some general bits about the con, and then I'll kind of cover my games, and then I'll kind of talk about other stuff, and then we'll see what else is going on. So just kind of the general con. So the con this year, last year was the first year of the con. It was only the one day. It was a Saturday. This year, it was the Friday and the Saturday. I was up here in Studio B on. I came up Thursday night. If you follow the channel, I streamed a couple times on Friday. I did not go because. Again, if you're following the channel, I was kind of working on, I don't say patching up, but kind of working on my adventure that I was going to run a little bit. And given that it's an hour in, an hour out, and I hadn't signed up for any games, I feel kind of weird about, especially if I'm not paying for a badge for signing up for games. I feel much better kind of as a, well, hey, if you need a play or you have an extra spot, but, ArcaneCon gave me a badge because I'm running a game, I presume. I think that's what they were doing for folks, which is really nice. But at the same time, I feel like I'm running the game, I'm kind of hanging out. I don't know. I just kind of feel like if you paid $30, I guess it's like the whatever. I don't even know how much it cost. And me in running the game, or you say that's kind of equivalent. Whatever. A lot of times I feel like, I'll just kind of hang in the back. And I like to talk to people. I like wandering around. And sometimes I know this happens when I'm with my cousin at some of these cons where he's just game after game after game after game. And that's just too much of a pace for me. Yeah, I'll run a game. I want to kind of chill out, get to talk to people, go grab some meat, kind of have some leisure, just build it in. So I wasn't running games on Friday. I wanted to work on my adventure on Friday. So I only rolled up Saturday morning. Just sliding down on my chair. Saturday morning, my game was first on the docket, 9 a.m., which is fine with me. I did have to get up at 6 and leave the house at 7 because, it's only about an hour and 5 or 10 minutes to Northampton, which is where ArcaneCon is. But, it takes you that much time. I stop to get gas. So that adds a little bit of time. Then I parked in the same place I parked last year, which was good, but that takes a little bit of time. Again, then you're kind of walking. You got to go get a coffee. Maybe that takes another few minutes, right? Everything just kind of adds up. So I like to, if I'm there running a 9 a.m. game, I don't want to get there at 8:50, right? I'd like to get there, get the lay of the land, see if I can get settled. Heck, I wasn't even the first person at my table when I think I had maybe 20 minutes, and I thought, I'll go and I'll just get all my stuff out and I can just kind of get set up. And already two people were waiting for me, which is great. But just I like to have that extra time. So it was an early morning. Get up 6, roll out at 7-ish, get there at 8-ish, park everything, blah, blah, blah. About 8:40, I'm sitting at the table. And I'm getting my stuff out. Now, I'm running my system, which is, I was the phrase I was saying before as I was sort of mulling, because I was thinking about making a video about something. I might. But I think there's really an interesting conversation to be had about like systems and then the expectations that come along with systems. Hey, Croco, good evening. I'm running a game that is not even popular enough to be considered obscure. That is how in the shadows my game is, right? But the benefit of it not being, say, BX or AD&D or Troika or whatever, 5th edition or Pathfinder, is that no one except for me is really going to have any expectations yet about this game. It's not like Shadowdark or any kind of other system. Let me give an example. A couple of years ago, Brian ArcaneCon ran a Traveler game, and it was really fun. And if you follow the channel, you might have remembered me talking about that. Well, it was a really cool. I think he's doing one of these older modules or adventures for Traveler or whatever they call them. It was cool. It was but it was basically a dungeon crawl. I don't say but. It was a dungeon crawl, and it was fun. And they added elements of it being a dungeon crawl, essentially in an alien environment. There was some neat stuff. We were wearing these vac suits, and so anything we did wrong, it wasn't just, you might get hurt, you might set up traps. Like, no, you're tearing your vac suit, and we only have a limited amount of vac tape or whatever they call it that you got to do. And so it really added an extra sense of tension to every move we're making. The fact that we're essentially operating in a really alien environment. But I came away from there enjoying the game and thinking like, yeah, it's really good. But I don't know if I got my Traveler. It didn't really fulfill. It didn't fulfill all of my Traveler itch, because part of it in my brain, any of Travelers, I want to go do space stuff. And if you play Shadowdark, I talked about a little while ago, I played in a Shadowdark game. I think I just did it as a short, and it was a fun game. It was kind of a hex crawly portion leading up to, I can't remember now what it was, but it was an outdoors thing, and it was great. We had a fun time. I really enjoyed the character I played, everything. But if you ask me, well, how much did you get? Or I said about it, it's great. It doesn't tell me that much about Shadowdark though, because I didn't feel like I interfaced that much with Shadowdark specific. So if you ask me after that game, what about all this Shadowdark stuff? Like roll to cast, I wasn't playing a spellcaster, or real time whatever, or always on initiative. It's like, well, it didn't really come up that much. In fact, now that I think about it, I don't think maybe he didn't run the real time initiative. I don't remember. We were playing more loosey goosey, which is totally fine. It's just not right. It's not that picture of Shadowdark. So I'm kind of going in circles, I think. But what I'm trying to say is that when I'm playing my game, I'm running my game, at least at the moment, since nobody knows about it, nobody has system expectations. And as I was walking around in the afternoon, I was listening to some conversations. I heard some people who were kind of expressing like, oh, this was okay. Oh, why was it only okay? Well, didn't get to do the thing that's on the tin of the game. And I think that's kind of, one, I can see where they're coming from. Because like I said, it's like, I love playing that Traveler game, but part of me is like, but I need to play a little more Traveler, because I didn't feel like I got what I want out of the Traveler experience. I really enjoyed that Shadowdark game, but I didn't feel like I got all the Shadowdarkiness, the fully kind of Shadowdark experience. But I wouldn't say that this person was coming at it like he's, again, I'm only catching a snippet of conversation, but as if to say like, yeah, it might have been a 3 or 4 out of 5, but I'm subtracting 2 stars because they didn't, I didn't get these elements of this system that I wanted. and like I said, I can understand where like, oh man, I really would have liked to gotten this, but people aren't running. I think there's maybe this element of, hey, be kind and be, what's the word I'm looking for? People are running these things out of the goodness of their heart, right? People want to run games. We're these, especially these kind of cons. These are not games that someone's being paid to play. It's not like Wizards of the Coast is paying me to run 5th edition, right? And these are not learning games. No one, unless someone's signing up to like, here's the game where I'm going to teach you how to play Shadow Dark. You shouldn't be thinking like, man, this game fails. It's a fail if I didn't do X, Y, or Z. And so it was a little bit of I guess I'm really just a little bit of a bummer, I guess, to hear that. But in terms of my game, when I talked about in other streams leading up to it, that I really wasn't sure how this investigation thing's going to fly, because my adventure that I ran was just a real is really investigation. And it really just dawned on me just kind of how it's really it's very down to earth and really dark, which maybe that's just the kind of mode I'm in. I don't know. I was thinking like, man, it's really dark. I'm thinking like, this is a pretty dark, and I'll get into that. Right. So I think if you're at these cons, right, if you're signing up for a game, and let me give you and I guess I'm going to just kind of go around a bunch of stuff. And the flip side of this, right, is Jack, who is on YouTube, also writes blogs. I don't know what his YouTube handle is. He's an awesome GM. He was running some Mythic Bastionland. And if I had one, not to say regret, I didn't get to play in one of his Mythic Bastionland games, but he did one on Friday and I wasn't there. And the one on Saturday was full. But I sat and kind of watched some of it. And it turned out that I think it's John from 3D6 Down the Line was playing in that game. And Jack does something really good that I always forget to do, including on Saturday, is he does this thing when he'll at the end of the game, he'll hold everybody there for a few minutes and say, give me your rosebuds and thorns about whatever, about the game, about the system, whatever. And it's really good. And I need to do that. I just always forget. It's funny, when I was watching him game, he's like, I got one more thing. I told him, I was like, that better be rosebuds, thorns. And of course it was. And then I'm thinking like, oh yeah, and I forgot to do mine. But he's really good about it. Anyway, John from 3D6 Down the Line was like, he didn't call it like if the person who was kind of I mentioned was complaining, I think would have put it as a thorn. I didn't get to do X system mechanics that I had my heart on or whatever. John phrased it as a bud, like, hey, just the way the game went, he was kind of curious about or interested in, and thought that the combat in Mythic Bastion was really interesting, and just the choices they made and the way the game flowed, they just didn't get to engage with that much. So it wasn't, he wasn't digging the game because he well understood, like, yeah, that's just, certain scenarios, certain choices you make, blah, 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 things happen, right? It wasn't like, but he's like, yeah, like, I'd like, and that's kind of where I fall, right? It's like, it's that bud, like, oh yeah, this dungeon crawl in Traveler was awesome, but yeah, I still have this little hankering out there to do some, space flying, as opposed to I felt like this other person who was looking at like a thorn, like it was almost like the fault of the person running the game or something, that they didn't, check off all the, again, it wasn't Shadow Dark, but like checking off the Shadow Dark boxes, or, insert your game of choice. But I feel like for my game, I don't really have to deal with any of that because no one's got expectations, because nobody knows what the heck it is. And I'm sort of surprised that I had people signing up at all, and that I ended up with, I forget if I because I put kind of a smaller limit. I've been putting a smaller limit on my tables in terms of player count, not because I don't think I can, not because I can handle more, but I just find it, I don't know, I just like it a little bit more intimate. It's just easier to kind of give people attention. I don't know, I just like it a little bit more. And I always feel like if I say 4 and then there's somebody around who has their heart set on playing a game, and it's like I can have that kind of hidden seat of, if everything's full up and somebody walks in, they're like, oh, we're just trying to a game. I'm like, yeah, take a seat. And you can kind of slot somebody in. But we had, I had 3. Did I have 3 or did I have 4? Maybe, I think I had 4 players. Pretty sure. And it was a good mix. So, just generally speaking, the one thing I noticed, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, is that they're right at that, they're basically a little bit bursting on that space. The church space that they've been playing is really nice, and the acoustics are actually pretty good. But last year, I was actually surprised that with everything and a lot of they have the wargaming stuff in another room. All the RPG stuff is in one space. I think they added more. I mean, maybe they might say, no, we didn't add any more tables. I don't know. Or maybe the tables just more people on it. But you were definitely at the cusp of it being kind of like, okay, it's getting a little bit loud in here. Like, it is a bit loud. I had to, project a little bit more. I know when I was watching Jack's game, poor Jack, the table for his second game, just where it was, there was kind of nowhere for him to sit, really. And then it was right by where he was standing, was right by this one access to one of the bathrooms. So he was constantly having people scooting around, and it's not anybody's fault, but like they're scooting around. There's no way to get around to go to the bathroom without disrupting him. There's just no way. There's not enough room. It was so squeezed up that you almost have to go sideways, kind of get around, get in. And so it's just unfortunate that, and maybe he could have moved to another spot, but everything, it's just a little bit, you're just a little bit packed in there, because he could go to the other side somewhat, but then some of his play, it's like somebody's got to be in that bad spot, and there's just not quite enough room. It was like a little bit squeezed in there. So a little bit, suboptimal. Sounds claustrophobic. Well, I mean, it's a big room. You're just on the edge of the room, right? And like, so you're in this corner. If you imagine there's a corner and then there's a doorway in this corner, I guess maybe it's, or, you're in a corner, there's a little doorway right off there, and it's like, I got to go in there. So I don't know if he felt it was claustrophobic, but it's just like, what can I do? And then it's just, you're trying to get in, and as a GM, you're trying to get in that flow. And for him, it just, again, he did an amazing job. But I was like, man, I would start getting annoyed just because, and maybe he was annoyed, he didn't really show it, because it's like you're trying to get in this flow, and then you have people interrupting you, and it's not their fault. There's only a couple of bathrooms in the joint, and that's one of the bathrooms. So, I mean, ultimately you go, well, maybe, as organizers, you got to kind of look at it. But, you're trying to, look, I don't even know how hard it is to put on a con. There's probably a lot of stuff you're trying to do. No one's totally at fault. It's just something that happens. But now it's like, okay, I think, and I remember talking to, I think it's Brian. He was like, yeah, we're trying. There's another spot that's not too far away. He's like, I'm going to try and get in that spot. And I think unless you're going to start, either there are more spaces in that church to open up or something else to do. Yeah, I feel like this was definitely, I think, at the limit of, what you can reasonably have in that space. So I wasn't in the first game, or in my 9:00 game, I was not in one of those corners. So I was in a pretty good spot. I basically stood the whole time, except for like a couple of minutes, which is fine. I don't mind. I saw some people, like I saw when Yochai was running Cairn, he did something which is probably better, but I had a little bit more. So the tables were all kind of lined up in sort of in a couple columns, and sort of lined up, and I was at one end, and they're kind of lined up the long way, right across, I guess. So my players were kind of here, and I'm projecting out, which worked okay. Yochai kind of sat in the middle, and the kind of players could be around him. And I wonder if that's better acoustically. I'm not sure. I don't know how much you project. If you're standing over here and I'm projecting that way, is that better, but I'm kind of closer? Or is it that I can kind of lean over and project outwards? I don't know. But it was all good. Yochai was there. He ran Cairn. He was running a booth. Joseph R. Lewis was there. He had a merch table. I got to meet Skullboy, who might have been there last year, and I just didn't really recognize him. Anyway, he was there this year. I got to introduce myself to him, say hello. Let's see. A whole bunch of folks were there, and I was there, of course. And it's a nice setup. Like I said, other than there's just it's just probably hit the limit of how many people it can hold. I don't know what the con numbers are, but I think it was pretty busy. Maybe a couple hundred people, plus minus some. I'm not sure. If you told me it was 200, I'd say, yeah, sure. If you told me it was 150, I'd say, yeah, sure. I don't know. I would say probably somewhere in there a little bit. And I think it's a pretty diverse. I think one of the things, like ShireCon I enjoy, but ShireCon is like an old man's con. It is a grognard con. Not to say there are no youngsters in there, but I mean, for the most part, it's a grognard con. And look, I'm a grognard, so I slot right in there. ShireCon, I just feel like it's got a lot more differentiation. Not everybody's young. In fact, a couple that was playing at my game were older than me, and that was really cool. And I know there were some other kind of folks who I know were at least I think are older than me. I'm pretty sure older than me that were running around, but there were also younger people, and there was a great diversity in games, which was really good. So I'm playing my game, but people are playing Troika, Cairn, um, shoot, what's what else? Blah 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 blah. There was some Traveler games being run. Mythic Bastion Land was being run. That Barrows and Borders or something like that. That game, whatever that game is, that was being run. There's another game that was called like BX HD or something. I don't know. That was something that's being run. That a Burn 2D6 game was. I think it was. He was telling me about it. Oh, when we went to get coffee at one point, and shoot, and he's running. He's got some kind of cyberpunk game that he's working on, setting or whatever for the rules. And it seems really cool, and he was running that. Yeah, there's just a really big, just diversity in games, and then there was war games downstairs. So it really is nice, and everybody I think came out of there. Just everyone was thinking how nice it was. One of the guys in my game came from Minnesota, Duluth, Minnesota, by himself. I think he said he was supposed to come with somebody else, and they bailed, so he decided to come anyway. Flew over. Hopefully, he made it with all the stuff going on with the shutdown. Hopefully, he was able to get out of town. Okay, flew over to, I guess, over and down, to play the game, to take in the con. So obviously people are getting aware of it outside of the sort of our kind of Northeast region, which is really cool. And there were several other people that came. I think there was a couple of people from the West Coast. I mean, somebody might even farther west. I think somebody came from Portland, maybe, or was it Washington State? I don't know. Oregon, Washington State. I think somewhere over there. There are people from, I think, the Carolinas or somewhere. There might have been a couple folks from Florida. It's getting a good rep, and it's really positive. And it's really hard to, I guess, I just can't overstate how the positivity. I mean, yeah, I mentioned the one person kind of grumbling about like, oh, I didn't get to do the thing, but it really is very positive, and everyone just seems to be really happy, which is good. Croco says successful con then. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, successful for them, and now I'll get into kind of, it definitely was successful for me in terms of running my game. And then, like I said, I think I spent the most of the day basically talking. So there's a bunch of us from Brooklyn that come up. There's a Brooklyn OSR Discord. I think I've mentioned it off and on. It's got Jack, the guy who was running the Mythic Bastion Lane. He's in that server. Joe, another guy who ran a game. He also does a lot of editing in tabletop RPGs. You'll have seen his name all over the place. He was running a game, and there's a few other folks from there. So they actually got an Airbnb together, which was really cool. And I hung out with them like post-con Saturday evening. Everyone went and kind of got some dinner, and then we just kind of hung out and just kind of chit-chatting over at their Airbnb for a while before I finally drove back here to Studio B. Yeah, there's just a lot. It's a lot of good folks, a lot of fun. It's a really good con. I mean, to me, like, man, would I travel across country to go to it? I mean, it's hard to say. I guess it depends on a lot of factors, but I certainly say it's a really good con. And the town is really nice too. Northampton, I'm sure it has its ups and downs, but the church is kind of right in this downtown stretch. So there's a lot of, there's coffee places, there's snack places, there's a CVS, there's multiple restaurants, vegetarian, vegan restaurants. There's like a really good burger place called Local Burger. Shout out to Local Burger. There's like a Mexican kind of restaurant. There's just all kinds of stuff around there. So granted, there's so many, the town, it feels like we're overloading the town a little bit, like, 150, 200 people kind of getting loose in there. Things get more crowded than they would be normally, but you have a lot of options as to what you want to do. And it's all kind of in walking distance. You don't have to get in your car and drive anywhere. You just walk across the street, get a coffee, get a drink if you need it, get whatever you want, get a pizza, get a taco, whatever. There was some really good Mediterranean food. I saw some falafel sandwiches and stuff that looked amazing. Here's some, I don't think I mentioned it, but what is this? Blackberry lemonade polar for the working man. And I think that there's a lot of, like Airbnbs and motels, and I don't know how many hotels are around, but there's definitely, it seems like there's a good variety of places to stay. So it is a really nice con location. And from what I understand, if they do end up able to get into a bigger space, from what he was telling me, that space is not right on Main Street like the church is. I don't know if it's Main Street. They're not right on that main drag, but I think it's pretty close. So I think they're able to keep that same feel, because I really like that. That's one thing from ShireCon. It's nice that they have the VFW folks do the food and things, but I did like it. It was a little bit better just in terms of location when there was kind of a street you could walk and get coffee and get different things. Because that now it's like you got to get in your car and drive, and it's a little bit more isolated. And of course, if you're at the big conventions, that just becomes a crazy mess, right? And it's like how far. I remember when I was going to New York Comic Con before it just got too ginormous. Is I was like, man, how far am I gonna have to walk to try to get away from all the con folks because there's thousands of them and they're all flooding every diner, bodega, street cart. It's just flooded with Comic Con folks. Like, well, how far do I have to go? How do I get away from them so I can just get something to eat in peace, kind of thing. Okay, on to my game. So on Friday, well, and previous before that, I was working on. I guess I can pull it up. Let me get some things set up here, and I can pull it up. Hold on a minute. I was concerned with my adventure. Not really super concerned, so I ran it at ShireCon. It is an investigative adventure, right? I've mentioned that. And it's heavy on the investigation. There's really no combat that you must do. There's no and I'm not and there's no combat you have to do. And I think one of the things with investigation that's been an interesting for me kind of sussing out is I feel like there's a little bit of difficult in trying to figure out how long it's going to take. It reminds me a lot of kind of like, I think the problems that people have with hex crawls and things, because how long does the hex crawl take, right? And I always say, like, well, don't you can't really set that question because there is no how long it takes. It takes as long as it takes. And if the party does X, Y, or Z, it might be long. And if the party doesn't do X, Y, and Z, it might be short. If they, if everything that they could investigate, they run away from and get back on the road or whatever, then it's going to be a really short. It's going to be in playing time, maybe in game time, it's days or whatever, but in playing time, it could be very short. They're avoiding all trouble, which is fine. It's their prerogative. They may really want to get to wherever. And this stuff doesn't mean anything to them, or it's not tempting them, so they're not going to do it. And I think with investigation, there's a little bit of that same thing. Well, if they get things quickly, then they're going to move through the content faster. If it's, or conversely, they have a hard time getting things, they could get slowed down a lot. Krakow says, investigation, a con game sounds troublesome, just gameplay wise. Well, I think, and it's funny because Joe of the Brooklyn OSR, he's also running investigation game, type game that I got to play in a kind of a test of a couple months ago. So we were both running investigation type games. I think the thing is, and I guess this will wrap back to my thing about system and expectations, right? Is I think if I was running an investigation game in 5th edition, I wonder if there'd be more of a disconnect or a harder sell, because people might be coming into 5th edition with certain expectations. And then my game, while you can run it perfectly well in 5th edition, I think 5th edition says you can't do this thing. The expectations of people would like, ooh, I want to do this and I want to unleash my whatever. It might just change, you know what I mean? Or maybe it just turns an investigation into more of a headlong combat or whatever, because that's kind of what they want to do with the system, right? You might get somebody who's just like, I don't know, but I want to use my smites today. So smite. And you're like, okay, well, I wasn't really trying to be that kind of game, but I guess we are, kind of thing. Whereas no one has any expectations with my game because they don't know it. So I don't know if that makes them more inclined to, one, if you signed up for a game, you have no idea what it is, because it's just like, oh, this is troop, and we're running it, and I think I put a little blurb of the adventure, and essentially it's an investigation. But I think I might be able to intuit that, well, if you read the stuff, you didn't just sign up blindly or roll a die and then pick whatever game, that you're into investigating, right? Because you chose it. You could have chosen other games that were more a different style, demons rising up or whatever, or something, or you could have chosen, you could have chosen the system that is more whatever, but you didn't. You chose my game. You have no idea what the system is, and in investigation. So hopefully that meant you liked investigation or you're open to it. And they were. And both times I've run it, they were. I've had good experiences. And I go back to, really, like I said, it was Bat in the Attic, Rob Conley, who wasn't it ShireCon this year, and I hope he's doing okay. I don't remember hearing why he canceled, but he was supposed to be there and he wasn't there. But a few years, not last year, I don't think, but the 2 years before that, I played in a couple of his games, which was running his original Wilderlands fantasy game. I don't think I have that. I don't know if that book's up here or not. It might be, but I don't have it handy. In any case, it's essentially, I think it's a 1E, his 1E kind of retro clone with some of his tweaks and stuff to it. And he ran these kind of open world sort of sandboxy investigation games, and those were really opened my eyes. Like, really? Like, we're at a con game and like you can do this. Like, it's not something that you can't do. And that's what kind of got me going. I was like, you know what? This can be done. I mean, he did it. I mean, not to say that my adventure is the equal of his or whatever, but it's like, wow, you can do this. But I think in his case, and in the case of the two games I played, I had good player buy-in. And at a con, I think any kind of con, that's kind of you are kind of rolling dice there. There were some people who signed up for my game late. They may have signed up not knowing that it was investigation or caring. So like, I just want to get in a game. This game has a couple of seats. Sign me up. So, there could have been some kind of buy-in issues, but luckily I didn't have those. So that was good. But still, when I ran into ShireCon, it ran a little bit fast. Not super fast. I think we finished with like maybe 45 minutes left or half an hour left in the time. But I just felt like as I was getting to the end, I'm like, it feels a little bit quick. And I think that might have even been after we had some postscript just kind of talking about it. So it might have been even a little bit shorter than like 2.5 hours. Maybe it was even closer to 2 hours out of the 3. Excuse me. So I wanted to buff it up. Let me switch windows here and I'll show you I can go through it a bit. Oh, is this going to be the right one? Whew. Yes, it is. Okay. So I'll go up to the map. I don't know why I didn't go to the map. Well, I know why, because I don't need all this stuff. So this game takes place in this little area that I call the Haver River Valley. It really is there's really a couple locations. You start off around the castle, the village of Buford, the Priory and Bordley, and then into these hills in Dunbar, or across the boards of the river, across the Dunbar River. And then you finally go to this mini dungeon in the Bilious Wastes. I do have a player map that I printed out. I took off the hexes. You could have them in there. I took them off. And I took out these things. And I left the Bilious Wastes label in there, but I took away the big thing. I just kind of had it as a blank, just the Bilious Wastes. Because I felt like if I left it in there, it would be super obvious where people were going. And, I didn't want that. So I left that. I left that alone. Now, the original thrust of the adventure is you work for the king of Oxwine, which, you can see there's this green as the borders of his kingdom. Not that it really matters for this adventure. And he said, like, oh gosh, some acolyte from the Priory has gone nuts, came to this village and took some kids and ran away. You got to go sort it out. So the party, this is part of that, that kind of con sort of setup is there's not like the giving the quest scene where they're like, do you accept? Like, no, you're on the quest. Like, go. So you go here and then basically, but then at that point, you're here and you're given like, oh, here are your marching orders. Some kids have been, taken captive, whatever, kidnapped from this village, figure it out. And then the party can do what they want to do. If they want to go to Buford first, which is, I think, the obvious one and what everyone does because it makes sense. Like, I think one of the nice things I was thinking more using the theme of, I was really playing on the Pied Piper. So, and this is like a hole in the adventure, because I mentioned there being like this flute that the guy's using, like the Pied Piper, to lead the kids off, and I don't really explain where they got the flute from or at the end of the thing I have it where he's broken the flute. I think someone asked like offhand, like, well, where did he get the flute? And it's like, well, nobody knows where he got it from, which is true. Nobody knows, not even me. I don't even know where he got the flute. It's not a big deal because they don't really fight it. You don't get a chance to fight to get fluted or anything, so it's not like that. But in any case, it's kind of one of these little like, where'd the flute go? Like, who killed the chauffeur was it the Big Sleep? Yeah, or whatever. How'd that guy got the flute? We don't talk about that. In any case, one of the things I didn't think about, but in retrospect is good, is there's a little bit of a, should I call it a false choice? So I give you this map and I say, all right, some kids have been kidnapped from the village of Buford. And I have the map in front of you on the table. Where do you want to go? Well, the obvious thing is you go to after the kids, right? Because that's an emergency. If it had been someone else, maybe you might take it slower or go to the priory first. Like you can see in other circumstances, it was like an adult, maybe say like, well, maybe they can, but it's kids. It definitely kind of puts I think it does give you a little oomph. Like, no, we got to get to that village, right? So it's I can see it being a little bit of a trick because I get to open up the map. You get to feel like you have this, and you do, because ultimately, if you chose to ignore the kids and go somewhere else, you absolutely could. Bad things would happen, but you could. But it's a little bit like, here, I'm opening up, but there's a clear, like, you should go here. Even though I don't say, go here, there is kind of a insinuated, like, you got to go help the kids, right? So you come over here, they tell you about the kids leaving, crossing, not the main ford across the river, but a ford kind of up here across the river into these hills. And then you can follow the tracks where there was some kind of space. Then all the kids scatter except for an older kid and the rogue acolyte who backtrack, come down, and then head kind of backdoor into Bordley. Now, both times I've played this, I have had my version of the Rangers. I've had Bounders in the group. And so the way I play this and the way I recommend doing it, really, even with other games, is they're playing it. The conditions were fine. There was nothing particular hampering them. They didn't have to roll to find anything. When he's like, I'm looking to see the tracks, I'm like, yeah, you see all these tracks. You can see where some tracks of the one adult and the eldest kid double back along. I'm like, I'm just giving him all the information. And I think it's great because it feels, I think you just, the person who's doing this automatically feels like, okay, like I got something, right? Because even if you have, like, I'm the thief, and if you like fail a bunch, or you fail, then it's kind of like, well, I'm a thief, but like, what the heck, what good is it, kind of thing. Whereas in this case, it's like, I'm giving it to you, like, no, go. And so I think that I do enjoy that. Krago asked if anyone jumped at the river. Nobody had to jump into the river, which is good. And in fact, they went around. They didn't take, because this is kind of I told them it's a little bit of a dangerous fording point. This is where you can roll some dice, potentially get hurt trying to get across. But they took a little bit longer time, but I told them it's not that long, which is not that long to get around over here. So they did that. So then once you get into this area, there are a few different, like all the kids kind of scatter. A few of them scatter together, a couple of them scatter separately, and then there's the elder boy. And so essentially then it comes down to is they start looking for the kids and they're following the trails of the kids. And again, they have this bounder so they're very easy to follow tracks. It would be a different story if they didn't have the bounder. This could be really hard. This could be a really hard segment, but with the bounder, it's kind of finding where the kids are essentially is trivial. When they found the kids, some of them are in non-trivial situations, but actually there was one thing they did which is really cool. So I had one of the players was playing a sorcerer. I had that ad hoc magic system. They chose elemental sorcerer, element of air, and at one point they did this thing where I also have these keepsakes, which you can kind of burn as a get out of jail free card. And they used a keepsake and this air to project their voice out with a little bit of a charming, beguiling thing to try to call some of the kids in. So you could project his voice out really far and pull some kids in. And I rolled some dice and I rolled really poorly, but I had one of the kids come running back. And that was the kid that would have been chased up the tree by a bear. So they were able to eliminate one off the bat by being able to pull that kid in. It was a really cool use of the magic. And that's what I really like about my magic system, but other magic systems, is you can really have fun with stuff. There's no off the shelf spell to do that in, BX, AD&D, whatever. And I'm not trying to slight it. It's just a different kind of thing. But with this, I do like that you can say, okay, how can I use air? Can I use air in this sort of projection kind of? And another thing we're going to try to do, which would have been cool too, is using air. One of their other ideas was to try to use air to basically do like a silence on them, so they could really be stealthy by stilling the air around them, which would have been awesome too. But they ended up using instead to do this kind of projection trick, which is really cool. Okay, so they got that kid in, so they're doing. So that's kind of, you have those elements, and this is what the other, when I ran at ShireCon, they did this also, not in the same order and did things differently. They didn't have a sorcerer, I don't think, and so they were kind of doing there. But anyway, so they do the kids, and then you so the order of operations really, right, is you come to Buford, you talk to people a bit, go get the kids, bring the kids back, then go into Boardley, figure out what's going on there, and then you figure out to go in here. And in all, both times I've run, and again, only 2, so tiny sample size, people have picked up on the stuff that's being laid down, which is essentially that, though I kind of fast-tracked them a little bit because I was watching the time, and I ended my slot was 9 to 12, and I think I ended it in 12:01. It's like on the button, but I had to shave off some things, right? So I was worried it was going to run too quickly before, and then I was like, maybe it was running too slow. But I'll get to what I add in a minute. In any case, I'll just the main thrust is you get in here. Now you can try to get overland through this, but it's really bad news. This fog tends to make you forget things. There's I think there's some undead critters or kind of other just bad things in there. It's bad. It's bad. It's a big delay. But both times playing it by different reasons, they get to the Witchred's Harrow, which is where this tomb of this guy St. Witchred's supposed to be. And then both times we had Delvers, which is like my thieves. So when the thieves get close and start checking things out, I'm not having them roll. I'm just telling them, it's like the thief's like, okay, or the Delver in my case goes like, all right, I'm going to go. We'll take a look around that. Because when these guys rolled up, I had people there's some kind of commotion or a big kind of hubbub around the harrow, and of course I have the thief notes. You notice that the gate's been bent a little bit, right? And the people try to play it off oh no, it's always been bent, and I'm like, you can tell this is recent, whatever. And then they end up kind of muscling their way in, and then he looks at the sarcophagus, and I'm like, yeah, you can see a little dust, you see it's not quite on right, and then of course they're like, all right, we're popping that thing open, and then that kind of breaks the dam a little bit on some of the information exchange. At that point, having been kind of caught dead to rights, and the fact that they've been telling this whole lie about the St. Witchred, they kind of spill the beans, and then the party goes down the stairs into this kind of ravine that sort of runs underneath the smoggy stuff, so you don't get smogged, and it comes out the pyramid. Then you go up in the pyramid, and I chopped the pyramid a bit, so they only had to go through kind of 2 chambers before I was like, okay, just down and through. So, and kind of here's if you, not necessarily, you don't have to have your dungeon. So here's because I'll talk about this now. The dungeon, if you can just, it's not about it having to be modular necessarily. So what I did was, here's the main thing. So you're supposed to come down, come to this antechamber. You're supposed to be able to go either one of these directions. You come through this upper chapel, come down here. There's a gate room, which unlocks this gate here. And then there are these statues, and then you open up this, right? So there's all this thing. And of course, you're also supposed to be able to go this way, and then you come down. Hey, hold on. Where's my glasses? Sorry there. Mr. Goats, welcome aboard. Okay. So I'm getting towards the end of the game. I have them hit the entrance. I have them hit the antechamber. They muscled up the gate. So I don't know if they were feeling like they were in a hurry, but they're like, okay, we're opening up. They're muscling up the, and so I had them like, oh, you feel that the pyramid shudder, and some of the rock dust, stone dust comes down. Classic. This place is not stable kind of stuff. And then what I did was, I'm looking at my watch or my phone. I'm like, okay, there's not a lot of time here. So what I did was I just cut this area out. So cut it out. I actually cut all this stuff out. I literally just said, okay, you're coming downstairs, and those stairs wrap all the way around and just come to here. Okay. And so then I did keep this puzzle because I think it's a neat little puzzle, and I just think it sets the theme, and they caught it right away. They open up I didn't even have the gate. The gate was, there's no gate here. Just walk in, right? Because I cut all this stuff out. So, okay, gate's open. Boom. They open these doors. It's black. They try to toss a candle thing in there, disappears like it's gone to a void. And then they look, and they see the blindfolds. One of them goes oh, let me try it. And he tries the blindfold, sees the stairs, takes the stairs down. And then I basically just cut this out and had them come right in here where the rogue acolyte was there, and then kind of into the prison. So I just cut a bunch of stuff out. And it's good if you know the dungeon. I know this dungeon pretty well. I've drawn it a couple times. Obviously, I wrote it up. So I'm pretty good sense of it. But if you can just have your sense of your dungeon, and you realize that time is not, you feel like, you feel like you're short, just, it's obviously, it makes, in my case, this is a pretty linear experience anyway, and it makes it kind of super linear, but that's okay. No one was that man, this is linear, because it's really all about this. The dungeon's not the thing. I even think, I'm wondering if this dungeon is just too big for what it's doing anyway. because all these things are kind of like they're just like they're just gates. It's like oh, okay, do this thing, and I either think I need to tell more of a story. I am telling a bit of a story in here, but maybe not enough to even justify having this much here, because like I said, that this is not really an exploration thing. This is kind of a bit of like a little couple of puzzles before you get to the end. I think the puzzles are all like they're in-world puzzles and they make sense, I think, in the world. But that being said, I don't think they didn't lose anything by not having those other ones. So if they don't need them, then should I have them kind of filling up space, or should I just try to say, like, how can I amp this up and how can I make it more meaningful or interesting or something? So they got down here and they did another cool thing. So these keepsakes I mentioned before, you can burn them as a get out of jail free card, and I kind of encourage folks to do them. There was some really cool moments. They had the Giant's Tooth again. So there's one of the setups where you're going to get one of the kids, where 3 kids are and got captured by a giant and are in the bag. And where is it? Bertram the Giant in the sack, some kids, and they are they're in there, and so then you have to go rescue the kids, and the giant heard them because they were calling out the kids' names, which is smart, but then the giant hears them, and the giant has tried twice now to I think I need to change this giant's tactics. The giant, if this is some kind of like multiverse sort of like live, die, repeat scenario, he's got to go back and look at it and say, 2 times I tried to basically ambush folks, and 2 times I basically got cut to ribbons. So maybe he's got to do something different. I don't know. In any case, the giant left the sack and then went and got some rocks and was trying to get them from kind of the outside of the edges of clearing. Didn't work. Some of the party charged ahead. One of the players, they had a really, the cool thing with the keepsakes, and I'm not trying to, this is nothing to do with me system wise, right? I tell them, hey, you have these keepsakes. They're like get out of jail free cards. You can spend them to do kind of things, right? And I told them it's supposed to be some kind of remembrance from your home or something else that's kind of important to you, and you sort of burn it, you destroy it, to do something good. And I've had folks in both, almost every time I've run it, pretty much have like come up with stuff. They haven't just been like, because you could just have like keepsake, which is me as a player, probably like, okay, I have a keepsake, right? Like I think when I ran at ShireCon, someone had the keepsake. Hey, what was it? It was his straw hat that his father gave him. In this case, one of the players had like a little medallion with some dirt in it from their home, and so they gave it to another player. And what they did was they had the player go up and like break the amulet for the dirt and toss the dirt in the giant's eyes to kind of blind them for a bit. Just really cool stuff. And this was just to buy her time, because she was playing the fighter, the warrior, to run over and like get the kids out of the sack. So Hexed calls it pocket dirt. Exactly, pocket dirt. So it's really fun stuff. Another one had, I think they had like baby shoes, like someone's baby, and that's what they used. That was part of the thing they used. Oh no, they used it at the end. So at the end, there's the boy who the rogue acolyte had kidnapped is with the demon, and the demon is trying to talk the kid into letting the demon come in his body. You're like, like, let me in kind of thing. And to pull the kid away from the demon, they used that air again, and they used the baby shoes as sort of this kind of thing to kind of pull it. And it was just awesome. So really, the clever, it just makes me feel so great when you see people kind of embracing it in the way. It has nothing to do with anything I told them. I was totally like, these players are awesome kind of moments. Not like, oh, well, my keepsake idea is the bomb. I mean, I like it. But this is people just taking with it and running with it in a way that I could not have, I would not have guessed, could not have guessed. But it was really fun. And so I gave them the giant's tooth. So I said, because I did this with ShireCon, I'm like, okay, they killed the giant again, and it was the warrior who had given up their dirt, their pocket dirt, and she's the warrior, and she was the best fight anyway, like stabby with the spear, down goes the giant. And I said, okay, well, I'll give you the same thing that I gave the Shire folk. If you want to take the giant's tooth, then you could do something giantish. And I try to, and a lot of my system really, like the magic and everything, really comes down to like playing with language and relationships, connections, right? So I don't want to say like it's like you have the strength of a giant. I want to say giant. So if you as a player have this giant's tooth that gives you the ability to do something giantish, I want you to think about, what does it mean to be giantish? What could be giantish? It doesn't have to be what we might think of obviously as being giantish. right? It could be something else. So I leave it up to you, like I leave it up to them, like, hey, it's giantish, whatever you want to be thinking. If you can make kind of the case like, yeah, this is giantish, then let's go. Crocus is a gigantic leap. Yeah, it could be anything. And so this was what they did. So they're in the room with the demon, and the last time I played this, the demon, both times they're able to get this figurine from the kid's parent, which is sweet. And I'll go over that because this is really, really, I thought it was a really kind of like a really interesting moment for me. It was also when I realized, like, man, this is a dark adventure, but it's really cool. The boy in his house has a figurine of Witchred. In the first game when I ran it, the party was able to search the house a little bit and find the figurine under the kid's bed, basically. In this case, it worked out a little bit differently. And I wanted to give them the option I wanted to give them the figurine. So I had the boy's mom like hustle in and grab the figurine and give it to them. Okay. In any case, they've got this figurine. So in both games, they get to the demon with the boy, and the demon's working on the boy, and the demon doesn't really care about them. And this is the kind of, I think it's kind of fun, and I don't know, I hope it's kind of different anyway. So you get this thing with the demon, and it's not a combat encounter. The demon's like not like have at you and starts having flaming whips and doing like Balrog stuff or balefire or anything like that. He's just like he's like very much like doesn't care, because in a real way he doesn't. Like you're not a real threat to his existence, and you're not like you're not that stature of hero yet. Like you don't have like you're essentially you're a nuisance, right? So the first time I ran the game, you can't get the boy to turn because they show him the figurine. I roll some dice, like, oh, the boy is like, no, can't do it. So the boy kind of tries to get away, and so the demon kind of maneuvers the boy to like puts the boy in front of him to basically when the party does come in to kind of attack him, he sticks the boy in front of him, and the boy gets killed instead. And so that was him, and I think it almost didn't work out the way I wanted to. Because what the demon's trying to do is make them mad enough to kill him, because that's what he wants. He wants them to kill him, right? But it almost backfired because they almost kind of rethought what they were doing. But they did end up killing him. In this case, they bring the figurine. The boy is swayed. I'm doing like an. Are we back? Am I back? All right. Sorry. Am I back? Is it back? Sound back. Oh, let me check. I'm not sure what happened. Sound, back. Okay. Am I back? Can you hear me? Can I hear me? All right. Where was I? Someone tell me. What was the last thing I said before my sound dropped? Somebody. What was I saying? Because I don't know for a minute or two there how my sound went. So somebody inform me what I was saying. If you remember. In the beginning. Yeah. Ha. So they had so I'll just go back to it. So they're in the room with the demon. They're able to pull the boy away from the demon at the end. They have the giant's tooth. And I thought for sure they're going to do the obvious thing. Warrior takes the giant tooth, which would give her 4 extra dice. On top of her dice, spear, take out the demon, which would have been fair. I was waiting for that, but they didn't do that. It was really cool. they gave the Giants Tooth. She handed the Giants Tooth to the sorcerer, and then the sorcerer, and then one of the other players who still had their keepsake, which I can't remember what it is right now, but it was kind of a cool. Or no, they used so part of the sorcerer's kit is they get some reagents. I think they might have burned they burned one of the reagents, and they had one more. Anyway, they burned a bunch of stuff and essentially used the strength of the giant, not to kill the demon, but to rejuvenate the wards, trapping the demon inside. And because they burned keepsakes, I was like, I'm not even gonna make you roll for it. It works. Like you don't know how long it's gonna work. Because I talked about this is something I probably should write in the rules or do something with, but I'm just riffing with stuff as I like to do. So I mentioned to the sorcerer how when he's around these wards, he can kind of feel them like a heartbeat, but it's a heartbeat that's unstable and it's like slowing, right? You can just feel it. So he uses these like, and I'm like, yeah, like you don't know how long it's gonna last, but like you've restabilized the wards, which is kind of like, I don't know, that is like, I mean, this has always been a setup that's sort of seemed to me kind of have this really Pyrrhic victory, like one way or another, there's this little bad spot, and they managed to avoid both the sort of Pyrrhic elements, which was one, killing the demon, knowing that you save the day for the moment, but there's maybe a ticking clock going on for this demon showing back up, or two, or that the boy's dead. Like they're like the three things are, well, the demon escapes and the boy, you kill the boy and the demon escapes, or maybe you save the boy and the demon escapes. But here they were able to not kill the boy, not kill the demon, escape, and rejuvenate the wards. So, hats off to them, because they did no patch. Not going to patch. I'm really happy they did it. I mean, I think the one thing, so I'll say this, right? And this is this is my game, my adventure, right? So I'm able to run it I feel like fluidly, in that I'll just make a decision about stuff and I'll just run with it, right? And I don't feel beholden to a book. I mean, I feel like everything should be this way. Don't feel beholden to the books saying it. I mean, obviously at some point what ends up happening is you may not feel beholden to the books, but your players do. And they start going, excuse me, but the PHB on page 46 says this, and you're doing that, right? That can be an issue. I don't have any of that. And my rules aren't that, I'm not trying to be that precise and crunchy anyway. But like just being able to kind of just, so I feel like I can get into a good sort of flow state, I guess, running the game, because I don't have to check the rules basically much at all. I mean, I check what's written in the module when I'm like, oh, someone's asking me the names, or, how many hit dice the giant has, and obviously where certain things are. But other than that, like I really don't have to muck around looking in a lot of rules. I mean, I don't have a lot of rules anyway. And so I have a lot of fun running. I mean, and for me, it's at the point where and I guess I should feel this way about a game that I made. It's like, I'm really happy running this game. I don't know if something else will catch my attention. Maybe I'll fall in love with Mythic Bastion Land, or maybe I'll fall in love with something else. But right now, it's like, I really just have fun running it. It runs really easily for me. I find it's a really easy teach. Those folks, they got on board with, because there's not that much going on. I just what I'm trying to get better at is, instead of people having to discover things like, hey, you should help the person who's got the specialty of doing the thing you're trying to do, rather than try to do everything separately, right? Help each other. So I just tell people that, because I just think, I'm not trying to run a quiz. I want you to have fun. And I think the most fun and saving you from, because this can be a harsh game. There's no doubt that there's a point where it's like, yeah, man, your chances of success doing some things can be pretty low, because you're not a specialty. You're not a fighter. If you have no fighters in the group, those combats are going to be really hard. If you're going into fight stuff, you might need to figure out another way to do it. Do some way of getting, edges or something, right? Because otherwise, yeah, it's going to be hard, because it's rolling sixes. It's only a 16 and change percent chance on every die. So I think I mentioned, because somebody looked it up, not me, but I think to get to about a 50% chance if it's not your specialty, you need 4 dice, right? So, that is a thing. However, on the flip side is I think people do really get into using the environment, using aid, all that stuff to help, and I think it kind of shines like that. And I feel like I'm able to kind of relax with it because I've internalized everything. I don't think it's that much internalized anyway. And you just kind of run, and I'll just do stuff like, oh, hey, yeah, you used your keepsake to do something cool, and you did something cool here, man. Now you can get a new keepsake from that, and that becomes this memory thing you can forward. And and I like rewarding specificity. If they just said they had a generic keepsake, some of the stuff they tried wouldn't have worked. But because they had made their keepsake into something like using baby shoes, and the baby shoes to be both like calling a child, but then also the shoes for moving and the moving quickly, like that was their thinking. Like, that's awesome, and you only get that because you've specified the shoes into something as opposed to just a generic keepsake. So I think the game kind of rewards if you decide to put more effort into that stuff. It rewards it. So I think everyone had a good time. So I mentioned I almost ran late, right? I had to cut some things off, not a lot, just some of the dungeon stuff, and I let them cut to the chase in terms of the Priory, simply because I felt like they were running out of time. Or I felt like I was running low on time. So whereas in the original, I don't know why I'm scrolling that way. In the original bit, there's kind of some things where you can look at you could talk to people. You could talk to the prior, and you could talk to go to Alfbert. This is the rogue acolyte's quarters, and you can do some stuff. And the first group did kind of they did investigate this stuff. In this case, I just had I kind of beeline them to the tomb and say, "Oh, you're walking around trying to find." Where these guys went, and you see the tomb, and you see a bunch of people hanging around tomb, including the prior, including the custodian. And so I was like, I'm just going to kind of focus you over here, which is something else that not any special talent to do that, but it comes from having that good knowledge, I guess, like, from an adventure standpoint, especially, get comfortable with the adventure enough that you can make these kinds of calls. Like, okay, I know where they are. I know there's 3 things, but I don't think we have time for those 3 things. So I'm just going to do one thing instead, right? In an ongoing campaign, it's not important. I would just let them, and if we have to stop the game and take it up next week, fine. But in a one-shot kind of con situation, if you find these, if you have the adventure internalized, you can kind of see where you might be able to compress something or combine, or, right, I noticed, they're at the kid's house, they're not going to get the statue, but it's just the way that the situation went, so I'm going to kind of try to get them the statue because I think it's important, and it's not because they missed it. So here I'll talk about it. So there's, once you rescue the kids, presumably you're doing that first, you go back to the village. I make a point of showing, where's the village thing, actually it's up here. I make a point of showing that the elder boy, his parents aren't there. Because I'm telling, like, all these parents in the village, and as you're bringing the kids back, the parents are all overjoyed. And then as you're distributing kids to parents and they're reuniting, there's like you didn't rescue the kid, but there's a set of parents who aren't there. And as soon as I say that, obviously I'm mentioning it. So just in my mere mention of it, it's noticeable, right? Because I could just say nothing and wait for someone to say, like, where are the parents of the missing boy? And I could say they're not there. But it's easy to miss that. And instead, I think it's pretty obvious if you're like, there should be another set of parents here who are asking us, did you find my boy? Which you have to tell them you didn't, and they're not there. So I just say, like, yeah, you're noticing that the set of parents were not there, and you don't remember seeing them earlier today either. And the first thing you're like, well, where is this house? So they go to the house. Now this is where, especially when I was running it, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, again, it's dark. So part of the implied, and if you follow some of the stream stuff where I was developing this, there's a very strongly implied, if you go to the house, I do everything but say it openly. It's implied so hard that this boy comes from a broken home, because when you go to the house, you see that the mom is concerned for the kid, but the dad is not, and it's clearly like not a good situation, which in the kind of backstory that's implied the whole thing is that's pretty much how the demon got his in. Like, that is what the demon's counting on, the fact that he found this kid who's just suffering, he's trying to get in through this kid's suffering. That's his angle, right? How do I get into this kid? That's it. So it's a purposeful thing it doesn't ever come up. Like, I don't ever say, like, I mean, afterwards I talked about, I'm like, oh yeah, and this is why, like, this kid was picked because he had the situation that made him vulnerable. Like, it made him this kind of, like, I have this kind of theme of despair. Like, this despair makes you vulnerable to these influences. Like, yeah, that's what made him vulnerable, but I don't ever say it anymore because it doesn't really, it doesn't, I mean, all this is kind of gravy. You don't need to go to the kid's house. And while that figurine has been super useful for both parties who have found it and used it, you don't need it. You could solve the scenario well enough without it. In any case, I'm playing with an older couple, a man and a lady, and the lady's actually sitting kind of on my side. And I start describing how, like, they knock on the door, and they can see it's kind of evening and there are lights, and you can see that, there's like whatever, candles, some kind of light on the inside. They can see silhouettes moving around, and then they kind of knock on the door, and the lady kind of comes out and then, like, immediately pulls the door shut behind her. And it's like, oh, like, how's, oh, did you find my boy? Like, how's the, like, and I'm like, no, whatever. And, like, they're trying to go in, and she's like, no, like, just don't go in there. Like, don't deal with him. And, like, the lady, like, immediately was like, hey, does she have any bruises or anything on her? And I was thinking, like, oh my gosh, like, I didn't even think about, like, that. But, like, and I'm no actor, and I think it's just the tropes are so obvious that as soon as you start to talk about, like, a really angry guy who doesn't care that his kid's missing, and whatever, like, the situation is pretty clear. Like, I'm not painting a really what's the word? This is a picture painted in bold colors. Okay. But, like, so I was like, whoa. I was like, okay, like, that's not my intention, but I could see how you would take it that way because it's got, like, all the earmarks of the situation. And I was like, no, you don't see any, like, that kind of stuff. But I said, look, clearly there's, abusive in another way, like, not physically abusive necessarily, but certainly maybe emotionally abusive. And that was when I was like, so they're really doing this thing. So their focus in this, I'm going to call it a scene, though I hate that stuff, in this encounter became less about investigating the boy. So that when in ShireCon, when I ran it, they kind of muscled their way in. They sort of got the ladies or like the lady, I don't know, whatever. They just kind of someone got in, like, the guy's face and kind of kept him busy while they searched around and talked to the lady. They found the figurine and left. Like, that was their MO. But when this party came up, and maybe it's because that there was a lady playing. I think when I played at ShireCon, it was all guys. I'm not sure. But their focus kind of changed, where she was like, they were concerned now, like, okay, we're going to get this lady away from, we're getting this lady away from this guy. And so it ended up making, like, a really kind of, I don't know, in a sense, like, I hate this kind of like a beautiful moment. I hate the terms. I don't really, but it was, so what happened is in the prologue, which I'll get to, that I added in, a farmstead becomes available. Okay, I'll get into that in a minute. And so they immediately, so the woman who's playing the warrior, she's like, hey, I know where there's a farmstead that is unoccupied. Go there. We know the name of, like, a friar who's over there. We'll tell him you're coming. Stay there, and then, like, just, like, go there. Like get out. Like, you had, because she's at some point. And she's saying, I'm having her sin, like, well, she doesn't have where to go. Like, well, she does, I didn't even think of this stuff. I'm like, yeah, she doesn't have where to go. Like, she doesn't have any family to go off to. She doesn't have anything, right? And they're like, okay, no, we got a place for you. You just go over here, tell the friar we sent you, put you up in that farmstead that is now a little bit used, but, you can be there. And then it was, like, really nice. And then she, like, goes in, like, gets a couple things, and then she grabs the figurine. She comes out and she kind of hands the figurine and says something like, here, give this to my son when you see him, and, tell him, to where I am. Like, tell him to come to me when you find him, So that'd be a really sweet moment, kind of out of kind of a dark place, maybe a little bit. I guess it's the whole thing, the overall thing with, like, the broken home thing is a little bit dark. This was, like, even taking a little bit darker, but it ended up having a really nice moment, which I just think is cool, because I wasn't trying to do something like that, but it just happened, and it was really cool. And so anyway, that was really fun. Or fun, I don't know. It was a really nice moment. But it was just interesting because the whole, if you're I'm thinking in terms of the investigation, like, what this what is the not purpose necessarily, but right, how does this encounter fit in the mystery? Well, it's you to get more information, right? That's kind of like, oh, you can go to the farm and collect some more, little more information. You can get the figure. In this case, it was like, no, we're gonna solve this little problem, a little sub problem we could solve. We're gonna get that lady out of a broken home, and then presumably when they rescue the boy, they send him off to the mom, and the dad gets to be a grumpy Gus all alone, and the boy and the mom get to kind of have a new life. So it's really kind of a sweet thing on the end of it that I had no idea was going to happen. But that's like the fun of, that's why you play the games, right? Because you don't know what people are going to do in a certain situation, and it just worked out really well. I mean, maybe 9 out of 10 times it doesn't happen, and who knows if I do this another 10 times, I'll be able to communicate things in a way that gets things across, and also probably doesn't seem like some kind of roll your eyes, like, oh, what is this kind of nonsense? This is not on us for this. And I also will have to mention, I really do, I do think like having X cards and all those kind of like lines and veils and stuff is important. I never remember to do it. What I need to do is I need to make up a card with like the adventure summary and some things about it. Cause I really want to have it. And of course I forget to say, cause it would be, I'm sensitive to things like, harm to kids. I have all these kids who are like, they might be eaten by bears. They might be brained by giants. There's one that might drown in a bog. Like, here I'm talking about like some kind of abusive thing. Like, and some people are like, I get it, would be like, this is not why I come to play these games, is to have like this turn into whatever. And of course, I'm not going to claim to be the most sensitive, whatever. I can see someone feeling like this is like a bad Lifetime or, what do you call Hallmark Channel, whatever. It's like, I get it. I didn't have it, but it was fun. Nobody, but that's something I need to do. It's kind of got to be on my list to do. Anyway, but it turned out really well. Really happy about that. Now on to the prologue. So the prologue, where they got the farmhouse from, I just wanted to set up something else. And I talked about it. You can go back and watch the stream from Thursday where I was kind of going through the whole thing. It's just what I envisioned as a short scenario, and maybe they took longer with it than they needed to. Maybe I didn't. There's always that thing of like, how much information do I want to, I envision sort of actions, you think in your head, okay, what actions do they can take? I want to reward those actions. And then like, do I hold something back because it's not super obvious and they're not checking for it, but should I, you get kind of that a little bit. But it's, basically it's a farmhouse. There was a fire there. It was enough of a fire that it brought attention, but it burned down the main farmhouse mostly, but didn't burn everything down. And then it was a husband and a wife. The husband's dead. The wife is kind of distraught, and there's a barn and like a pig pen kind of thing. And the lady, when you arrive, the man is laid out in front of a pear tree. The lady is kind of slumped down in front of the barn door. Some pigs are rooting around, and like there's some smoke, little tendrils of smoke still going, and there's like an overwhelming like smell of ash and coal and all that kind of stuff. And it's kind of, what do you do, right? What do you in a situation? You're tasked again. This is like, you're given this. When I started the original adventure with, you're given the task to find the kids. I start up this one with, go check out what something weird's happened in this farmhouse. This friar saw the fire or saw the smoke, went and then found the man dead. And the man's got like, his throat is torn. He's got like some big gash across his chest. It's clearly not the fire's work, but it's also clearly not the lady who did it. So there's a little bit of mystery there. Oh, well, who did it? The lady seemed to be acting weirdly. So the guy's like, oh, the fire's like, oh, I'm going to go get some help. I don't even, I think I'm in my mind, he doesn't even do that. He makes an excuse to go leave, to go do something, like, let me get something else. Let me get something. And he goes and gets help. Right. Krago says, go check something out is my favorite hook. It's a very nice hook because you can get into all kinds of mischief with it. So, okay, so the party's there, and they're really, they need to come and tell, because they're going to go figure out what happened and go and tell the king what happened, right? So they got to, it's not even just go figure it out. They got to figure out and come up with what, and I thought might be some interesting stuff there with, and I think there was some. It was kind of interesting because the party, they kind of looking around. I told them that, okay, you're looking towards like the mud where the pigs are, and there's like a deep depression in the mud, and there's a little bit of the pen, the wattle fence around the pen that's kind of been broken a little bit, and there's like mud in there, but it's like they weren't sure, like, did something go into the pit or something come out of the pit, which I suppose it could have been more clear that it clearly was out of the pit, but I'm like, I don't know. You can, this is part of like investigating. Go check it out if you want to. The lady's very evasive about stuff. And I think at one point when they start to move towards the barn, she's like getting in the way, like, ooh, ooh. And so that kind of obviously they're like, okay, we got to get in the barn. They do. And they see like the undead guy in there, but he doesn't attack them right away. He's like turning, and then like first he's like got his back to them, and he's kind of turn. I like having this nice turn, and then he says the lady's name, like Leofa, it's her name. He kind of says that, so that I hope was to giving them a little bit of a like, this is not just like zombie kill it kind of thing, but there's something going on there. And then there was some disagreement in the group, but they didn't end up like trying to countermand each other. So the lady playing the warrior, she's like, I'm going in, I'm going to stabby this thing with my spear. And a couple of other players were like, well, I don't know if I want to do that, but I'm not going to stop you. Like they were pretty keen on doing kind of like the teamwork bits. They're like, I'm not going to stop you. One of them, I think, tried to light the barn on fire. I think he's hoping to, distract the undead guy. I forget what one of the other guys did, but they basically were like, well, I don't know if we want to do this. I don't know if they wanted to just, I'm not sure exactly what they were, if she had said like, okay, well, I want to attack, what do you want to do? They would have had, I'm not sure what their plan would have been, but they weren't sure they wanted to do it, but they did. But she missed her attack. And then I had the kind of this ghoul thing kind of jump out, but not attack her, but go and like grab the lady. And like they end up, the lady, he rolled, he hit, she's got one hit die, she's dead. And so, but that was kind of all he needed to do to fulfill his thing. And so they both kind of die like in an embrace, which I thought was kind of nice. But the upshot is, and then they kind of stamped out the fire in the in the barn, so it didn't burn down also. So you end up having this like nice piece of real estate there, or not nice necessarily, because they're too, it's been a little mass murder or a little, multiple homicide sitch in there, though. You're in this kind of medieval period. It's maybe not all that unusual. I don't know. And then it's on the way back from there that they're going back to deliver this message to the king. And then someone's like, hey, you tell me what to tell the king. You got to go to the village. Right. So it all works out. They did do one interesting thing, which I didn't really think of, is like undead. They had this theory of like, because I'm talking about, there's these sort of omens in the sky that bad news is happening. And that's trying to set up the fact that the demon, the seals, the wards around the demon are weakening. And that's where you're getting these kind of cosmological events mirroring that. But they were like, and I think this thing with the undead thing, I was thinking like that also is part of it. But they were, it was cool. They're like, let's go check by the cemetery, just make sure everything's cool there. So they go by the local graveyard. I'm like, yeah, it's all cool. But there would be a fun other thing to put in there. Maybe if it would start to get a little too involved for like a quick con game. But I could certainly see like for something having like maybe a slower burn, or maybe making this demon have more of an undead connection, that dead are rising up in particular. And there's also this bog wight, which I really like this idea of, which I developed for here. There's a phrase called a seek sorrow, which is somebody who's like basically like they're like going after their own grief. I forget they're literally like seeking their own sorrow. It's like seek sorrow. And I really like that for a creature, an undead creature who needs to fulfill something. And it's not that they really want to out of there. Like he doesn't, like, if you imagine spiritually, he was killed by his wife and or his brother, who's the husband. It doesn't really matter who did what, because ultimately no one's going to be able to discover how he was, who killed him exactly. The important part is that the two, his wife and then his brother, conspired. And they buried him in the pig pen. They buried him under the pig pen, which I think was actually a good place to bury him. They buried him down there. So his thing is, he's driven by this, like, he was done wrong. Like this is this is an element of undead that I want to incorporate, or I've been wanting to incorporate to do, is if you just have undead lying around, other than, necromancers, whatever, they're doing their thing. But a lot of this stuff is, hey, you're a revenant. It's like something is incomplete. Something, you did not get a proper burial. You were done dirty, and you're kind of driven to get justice in a sense, even though like the guy doesn't really want, like, if you imagine spiritually, that guy doesn't really want to kill his wife, right? But he's like driven to it. Like I ran across the phrase seek sorrow, and I'm like, man, that's a great phrase for it. He doesn't really want to. I think maybe he still loves her. He probably didn't even have a chance to not love her, because he was killed before maybe if it had come out that she wanted to be with his brother and all this stuff, maybe he would have grown to hate her, but he didn't have a chance because they killed him. But, and for her part, she is not trying to escape. She understands what's happening. She knows, she doesn't necessarily know why the guy woke up now, why this happened now, but she knows him having woken up, what is happening. And that's how she's able to kind of get him in the barn. And that's also why she's kind of protecting him, because she knows like the gig is up kind of thing. Like she knows. And so and that's why, in the moment where he attacks her, I talk about how she doesn't fight it. She's like, she accepts it. She's kind of ready for it. And that's why I mentioned, like, do I need to put a self-harm warning? Because one of my other outcomes was if they leave her alone, and maybe it's something I just don't talk about, but like in the back of my mind, if they don't arrest her and try to take her in, they leave her, she would basically want to just not be around anymore. She would, and maybe even other things would happen. Like it's done for her, right? It's done. So I really like this. I thought it played well. It was fun. Low stakes. You're just dealing with this lady. A little interesting spot. I think it demonstrates. Look, this is nothing. There's nothing I'm really like. I think you can get a lot of mileage. Like we probably got. I don't know how much time they spent on it, but just this little situation. Hey, here's a crime scene. Put it together, and maybe there's a little twist in there, something a little bit fantastic. There's an undead guy. There's like a conspiracy to commit murder, blah blah blah. Well, interesting, and it ate up some time. I mean, not that I really, that's not how I meant. I mean, it was an interesting scenario that helped set up things to come, fill in what I was hoping was, hey, I don't want to end short, so it's helped me like stretch out the time, but hopefully in a way it doesn't feel like I'm stretching it out. I didn't like, I'm not going to try to take this, X amount of content and then pull it out to fill up Y minutes. I'm like, no, I'm going to add this other piece in there. And it might have been that they took longer. Again, I should have done like a time check just to see. But it was good. And then of course it ended up being kind of resonating later when they're like, we have just the place for you to go. Hey, go to this farmhouse. It is vacant. We have a new vacancy over here. So it was good. It was all good. So that was my adventure running experience. I was only able to get a little bit of feedback because, like I said, I had a 9 to 12 session. I ended at 12:01. I asked people how they thought about gamer thing. I forgot to do the roses and buds, thorns kind of thing, and people were kind of getting ready to scatter. But everyone seemed like they had a good time, which is all I can ask for. I felt like everybody got the rules, and it was easy for them to figure out how things worked, which is what I want. There's not a ton of rules. Again, I can walk someone through it, and I don't have to worry about all kinds of edge cases. And some things I would kind of tell them or remind, like, oh, your keepsake, this happens. Oh, if you want to do this, I did do the virtues and vices. I'm like, hey, if you want to do a virtue and vice, this is what they do, and they use those. All worked really well. All worked out really well. So I'm really happy. I'm really happy about it. And I will, I have these as separate PDFs. I called it the Rueful Widow. I will add it to the main doc. I definitely see there's some stuff that I just had. I caught that there's like a TBD in here, and I'm going to reformat this a bit and do some fixing. Where was that TBD that I saw? I was looking at, I'm like, why does it say TBD here? It's like, oh, I guess I just forgot all about it. Yeah. That was that. Where was the TBD? I bet you. Oh, TBD. Oh, there it is. Search the reveals Bertram's lair. Inside is TBD. Yeah, so it as an aside, the Hell Giant, he has no loot on him, but his lair is somewhere. So if you found him and wanted to spend the time, also I think I'm going to put more of a clock in here, because these kids there is an expiration date on how long those kids will survive. So, but it is something that, again, like if I was making this, if this were available to buy, which it isn't yet, then I would want to add that stuff in there, because I think this could be a fun little adventuring location to get things started. Then you have something, you could finish the adventure and be like, oh yeah, I wonder where that giant was lairing, and try to find him, kind of thing. Because I give a fair amount of area that I'm really, like I said, I'm really only using the the prequel or the prologue kind of thing takes place just in that hex, and they're kind of just, and these are 3 mile hexes, and there's a road, so it's pretty quick just to get around. I'm trying to think. It was nice seeing Yohai. Didn't get to hang out with him as much, just the way the night went, and but it was nice to see him a bit, talk to, like I said, Joseph R. Lewis a bit. The one thing, I feel like I'm able to capture people because they're at their merch table. So it's like, aha, like you can't escape me. How I may talk to you. But it was fun. It was fun talking to them. It's always nice to see, but you kind of get these like, I feel like you get these like con relationships. There was the guy, one of the guys who's a big traveler or fan. I guess he runs Traveler. I guess he ran it last year, and he played in my game last year, and I guess he ran Traveler last year. I just didn't realize it. And then he had a cool Traveler referee kind of shirt, and he came, said hi, and he was running Traveler on the table next to mine. Like, you just end up seeing people. I guess he'd be like, oh, like I don't even necessarily know them. Like, oh, I seen that guy at ShireCon, or oh, I've seen that guy somewhere. Like, oh, I've seen them here before. I guess I said it's a fun deal. I'm trying to think. I don't know if I have anything more to say. The food is good. There's lots of food around. It's in a great spot for food. Everybody's super cool and nice. Yeah, I don't know. What else am I missing? What else am I missing? The You Can Breathe Now, their games, they got some cool stuff. Oh, thanks. Yes. I'm not even sure how I would say that. Yes, SF1TZ says, dude, was great playing a game. Well, I appreciate it. I'm glad you had fun. I had a lot of fun running it. You guys it was a great group. I mean, I feel like I've just been really lucky, I keep waiting because there's so many ways it can go wrong. I'm running my own game with my own material. I got nobody to blame but myself, at least for partially. I have to blame at least, it can't be like, well, the material, it's like if I was running something like BX, I could say, BX is whatever. Some people don't like that, whatever, but it's my game. So it's like, I gotta kind of do that. And if my own material doesn't work on my own game, then it's like, okay, can't blame it, can blame it on no one but myself. But it's been, like I said, it's been a great, I mean, every time I've run the game, it's been a great experience. And I don't think it's like because my game is great. I just think that in these smaller cons, and I think, going back to that sort of system expectations, I think there is something to be like, if I'm not, now granted, I know it's a double-edged sword, right? My table was slow to fill. It was fine because nobody knows what the heck the game is. And I don't, and I probably should do a better job maybe selling it on what the game is, but I don't know how, in the little space that you have, I don't have oodles of space to sit there and describe, like, here's all the in and outs of the game. I'm sure there are people who didn't do it, like, ooh, I like investigation, but I don't know what the hell that game is, and I want to play a game that I actually recognize, like Mythic Bastionland, so I'm going to do Mythic Bastionland instead. Yeah, I get it. I totally get it. But at the same time, not being burdened by that, people thinking like it's 5e, so it has to be this way or that way, or do I have to do things? And I can kind of just play things fast and loose like I do, because nobody's going to be able to point to the rule book and say, well, in the rule book, it says you can't do that. It's like, well, it's my rule book. You don't even have it. I can do what I want. I mean, and again, you could do that with any game, right? But I think as everyone has discovered with a lot of games that are much more established, some people are willing to roll with you on that stuff, and some people want to sit there and say, nope, the book says this or whatnot, right? So I don't have to worry about that. So that's really good. And then, like, this adventure is pretty dark, right? I've got I've got a double murder. Granted, it's kind of a love, a double murder. Murder of love, a murder of passion, but it's kind of dark. I've got like a broken home with an abusive parent. And then I've got a kid from that broken home being seduced by a demon. Not in any sexual way, but just being, whatever. So it's dark. And I've been wondering, do I want to add some kind of more, maybe amp up the fantastic bits a little bit more? I have a couple of ideas. I'll have to mull over. I don't really mind the fact myself that it's kind of a down to earth kind of game, but I also feel like I'm the kind of setting I'm playing with. I do want it to be kind of down to earth, but I also want to have kind of a fantastic sort of fairy quality. That's right. It's a triple murder, actually. Yes, at the end of the day, it ended up being a triple murder. Started as a double murder, ended as a triple murder. But then it also ended up as a great like a rescue escape plan for a mother and son leaving a bad situation. So it all worked out. It all worked out in the end. Then there was that bog white, who I think I might redo slightly because he just kind of comes up and then gets killed, which or people run away. That was the two that's the two things that happened. One, they rescued the kid and got the hat both times, but this time they rolled really well with that spear, man, with Snicky Snack, and just took it apart. The other time they just ran away. But I feel like I want to make it. I maybe add a little more to that. I like that seek sorrow concept, and I think I want to kind of apply it there, where it's not just like wanting to come up and kill you. Though, granted, in this case, it didn't get a chance. It might have wanted to come up and say hello, but it's rising up out of the bog, and they're like, "Woof, gone." Which I don't blame you. Like, you don't wait for the thing to talk, but maybe I can make the circumstances so it's a little bit further away or in a situation where it could speak. But they did get a magic dagger out of it, so it's all good. All right, let's see. Anything else to say about anything? It was nice. Obviously, it was nice to see the Brooklyn OSR crew who was hanging around. That was all good. I kind of think that this thing when Daniel, some other folks, not Daniel per se, but there was a for ShireCon, some of the folks that came up, they got their Airbnb and then they kept it for an extra day, and we did another day of gaming at the Airbnb. It's really cool, and I feel like there's enough of the Brooklyn crew. I feel like that could be something to be cool. I mean, it's really something if you have some friends do a con, just do that anyway, because it's nice to just be a little, it's quiet. You can just kind of play something if you have, right? It's just kind of fun. It's great to do all that stuff. It's also great, just like, hey, this is we get to spend some time with each other that we don't necessarily get to, So you have a nice opportunity. Extra long gaming, Croco says. Yeah, I mean, these cons are only 2 days. I mean, I only did 1 day at the con. I think everybody else did the 2 days, but it's really like 1.5 because it starts in the afternoon Friday. I think it's like 1 or 2 is the first slot. So it's not all day Friday. So it's a little bit different than, say, a PAX where it's 3 days, 3 basically full days. But it's kind of a fun thing. I would definitely consider, if you're going to go with some friends to a con, think about like having like a down, taking one of those afternoons or whatever, just doing especially if you don't get, there are people you don't get to see necessarily often in a group, take some of that time. And, if you can, like I said, my cousin, he goes not con madness. He is so deep into the con in these cons that he gets into those. He's all about board games. He gets in these board game tournaments and he's locked down for the entire day. Like, we'll go to PAX East or PAX Unplugged. We get in there at opening, and I'm like, all right, man, I'll see you. Maybe I'll see you I'll meet you at lunch, but probably not. And maybe not even in the evening, because he's got, they got stuff at PAX running and rolling all the way to like 11 p.m. midnight, and he'll be doing that stuff, and I'm not, right? And so I think it's nice when you're just like, yeah, let's, if you can bear. I mean, I think it's hard because there's that kind of opportunity of, well, we're all here at the con, and it only comes once a year, and I don't want to, I could do this anytime. But like I said, it's a nice thing. It's a nice thing if you have it to be able to get that extra time. Like, yeah, let me hang out with my homies. Let me hang out with my homies a little bit before you kind of get a break from the madness. So let's see. Is there anything else? So I got to watch the tail end of Mythic Bastionland, which I thought was really good, but I don't know enough about it. There's too much going on for me to really understand procedures going, but it was a really great time. Jack does an amazing job. I mean, he's doing all this physical work, like pantomiming and stuff. It's really cool. They were doing as the myth of the wyvern or wyvern. I don't know. I always pronounce it wyvern. He was pronouncing it wyvern. I'm not sure which one it was, but he did a really great job just kind of bringing this really funky version of the wyvern to life. they did a lot of stuff with Sears, and he was telling about Sears later and all this stuff, but I didn't see that part. They were kind of trying to track it down, and it was cool. Like I said, I didn't the mechanics. I just don't know enough of the mechanics to be able to say like, oh, and then they did this and then I'm just kind of. They had a good flow going on. Jack's definition of a character, dude has personality to spare. Yeah, absolutely, and he puts a lot of energy in it. And he was thinking about running a third Bastion Land game, and I was kind of hoping like, please run one so I can play. But he got out of that last game, and he's like, I am done. And I don't blame him because he's putting so much into it, and he's like I said, he's constantly getting nudged around by people going to the bathroom and stuff. That it's just like he had nowhere to sit, like, and he's constantly moving. Like he was really putting on a show in a good way. But Mr. Bashline seemed really cool, and he made his own map, I think, in Hexed. I think he used the procedures from the book, which again I don't know, and he had a big poster of it, and he had I don't know if he was using, maybe he's just using like the sticky part of a sticky pad, but he was noting where you were and where the party was, and they're moving around. They're trying to track down this wyvern. So they met some other knights who died, and like it was really cool. It seemed to have like this epic kind of knightly vibe to it, which I do want to capture with my game, not necessarily in the way that he does it, but I do want to have capture some of that. So it's just neat to see it in play. That's the only game I really watched. And there's not that much space to watch. That one, actually, a good thing was it was kind of against the wall, so I was able to kind of find a spot sort of out of the way, except for the people who were moving by me to then move by Jack to go to the bathroom, because I was kind of in that access point. But I was able to, like I said, watch it. Where otherwise you just sort of have to be kind of on top of tables, walk around, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to be intrusive, and I know him, so I'm like, if he sees me watching there, he knows I'm just kind of watching. I'm not trying to be weird or anything, so it kind of worked out. But I didn't get to see. I know there was it Heroes of Public Access? I can't remember exactly what it was, but people had a lot of fun with that one. The Troika game, from what I was just hearing from the other Brooklyn folks, the Troika game was a lot of fun. The ArcaneCon Discord was pretty active with people just basically singing the praises of every game that they were playing. So I feel like everybody's had fun doing everything. And that's what you want out of a con. And yeah, I had a great time. Can't wait till next year. Not exactly sure what they're going to do next year. I'm curious. I mean, I think if they want to keep growing it, which I think they do, then they got to get a bigger spot. I don't, unless there's just other places that they can, in that church, they can open up, but I'm not sure if they can. So I kind of feel like that the church is a really great spot, but they just maybe have outgrown it, I guess, which is crazy because it's only been a couple of years and it's just whoop, whoop, going. So that's cool. Yeah, back to the grind tomorrow. Yeah, they do need another. Yeah, they do. They, I know there's other, like, I think there are rooms that they're not using, but I think they have purposes. Like someone was saying they got there early, and there was like a setup for basically like an AA kind of meeting. And, you have other spaces, things are doing it. Church has got a lot of stuff going on, and you have to take things that put things together, take things apart. Are there other community things they're doing where you can't like take over the room for 2 days because there are things, even if not during con hours, but there's stuff like, okay, it's just, it gets kind of messy. And I think what he was saying was the other location they're trying to get into, which is much more expensive, but I mean, I think they're doing well with everything. So hopefully they've got, they can make the money or do whatever for the deposit. It's like an art center. So I think it's something that's set up for lots of, I'm guessing it sounds like it's like a communal arts center, some kind of arts center. So that seems to me like, okay, it might have good spaces for, essentially for games, right? People talking and conferencing and activities and things, which feels like it'd be a good fit for role-playing games and board games. Oh, one thing I saw, man, I just want to say, like, what's the inverse of a shout out? I don't want to shout out. I don't know the person. But I do want to shame them slightly. Listen, I know that we all got our phones, and I've been guilty of checking my phone every now and then. But I went down to check out the wargaming room, and I know it's especially with war games and board games. Sometimes there's some downtime going on. I get it. Your turn, things going on. But the guy had his phone with college football on it. Like, he wasn't even trying to hide it. It was just like there on the table, and he's just looking down at his phone, and then people are kind of doing something. And it's like, come on, man. Like, I get it if you want to check a score. I get it. Sometimes I'll get a text message from my daughter, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'll do something, do that. Or like, oh, let me just kind of, I got a little blurb. I'm like, I just, like ADD, like, oh, I got to check it, whatever. But you don't need to have you know what I mean? If you want to be there, you want to go watch college football, go watch college football. You want to come play games, come play games. But you can't. It's just not fair to everybody. And I would have been super frustrated or annoyed if I'm playing next to a guy who's not even giving the game. I mean, can you even say he's giving half attention? Like, I don't even know what it was. Just put it down. You can get the scores later. The highlights will be on YouTube or elsewhere. Or if it's that meaningful for you, don't sign. You know, it's my alma mater and they're playing. This is their big game. Okay. Sorry, pick one. Go watch the game and then come play a game, or, you know, but don't try to have your cake and eat it too. And it was just kind of just a little bit like, come on, man. You know, don't be that person. Like, have some discipline or just make choices. And I think I have this kind of pet peeve where if you've ever noticed, you know people in your life who they want to kind of have everything. So if you invite them to something, they'll kind of hedge their bets in case somebody else invites them something better. Like, oh, we're doing this thing on July 4th. You want to come and hang out? And they're like, maybe. And it's like, well, why maybe? And some people, I know one person will tell you, like, well, my other friend might be doing something. And if they're doing something, I'm going to do something with them. But if they're not doing something, then they'll come to you. Or they don't tell you that, but you just know in the back of your mind, it's like, you're looking to see if there's other offers, right? Or, you know, you're trying to get this like, yeah, but I might cancel. And it's like, no, don't, you know, pick one, right? I get it. I have no problem if you're like, yeah, I prefer to be with this person than you. That's fine. Everybody has preferences. I don't have a problem with that. But just be adult enough and responsible enough to just pick. You want to watch the game, watch the game. You want to play the game, play the game. Don't try to play the game and watch the game at the same time. Rant over. I think that's all I've got, folks. Anybody have any last questions, comments before I wrap this bad boy up and get myself some late dinner? I'm trying to think if I have anything else to say. I will probably put this up for patrons and folks first, and then something else. I'll just handle the TBDs and a couple things and stick the prologue in and at least put a draft of it out. One thing I saw that Joseph R. Lewis was doing, which I thought was really clever, was he's releasing adventures for multiple systems. And I always, you know, just the way I've envisioned that in my brain is that, you know, you have like, I have this written like this, and then I'd make another version that's, say, written for OSE, and I make another version, and I take out the mechanics here, or, you know, for OSE or my game, and I put in Shadow Dark's mechanics. But he didn't do that. He basically has a page for each one of the systems that has the stat blocks and everything for those systems. So that you write the adventure once, and then you have these pages at the back that you just reference for your system of choice. So in other words, if I was going to take an example like here, right, instead of having these stat blocks here, I would maybe, you know, I would have one of these for each of the systems. Like, oh, for my system, for Shadow Dark, if I was going to do Shadow Dark, for, say, OSE, if I'm going to do OSE, et cetera, et cetera. Croco mentions conversions get pretty annoying if the systems are too far apart. Yes, there is some of that. And I think you have to write things in the text, right? So some games don't have saving throws. Some games do have saving. Some games, so you have to figure out a little bit of like, well, what am I going to write? And I think what he said is, which is smart, and I always feel like sometimes I'm overthinking this stuff. I mean, people overthink things all the time, and I'm often have told people, like, stop overthinking it. You're overthinking it. And I think that's something I overthink, which is there's a trap, right? There's a trap. Okay, well, how much do I need to write about that trap? Do I need to write like there's a 2 in 6 chance of X, and there's 3 in 6 chance of Y, and there's this? Like, I could just say like there's a trap, and then I'm relying on you as the GM to just use your judgment on how you run traps. And if you're playing BX, then you just use traps the way BX tells you to run traps. If you're viewing Shadow Dark, then run traps the way you would run traps in Shadow Dark, and, you know, or OSC, which, well, that would be BX or whatever. If it's like Troika or Cairn, like, you run them, you know. And so if you just kind of get, I think if you can just find yourself comfortable in that wavelength, and you don't just get you know, crazy, then it doesn't drive you crazy, because it might be interesting. So I might do that with something as a trial, just to kind of get it, because it's nice to get things in people's hands, right? And my system is so some people might enjoy running this, but they're probably never going to run it in my system because they don't know anything about my system. But maybe I can, if I get it into someone's hands who's playing Shadow Dark, and then maybe I can tempt them like, hey, try out this. If you like this in this system, you might like it in this other one. Winky, wink, wink. Come try it out. I don't know. It might be a way to kind of Trojan horse getting my system in front of eyeballs if I put something out that would work for OSC and or Shadow Dark or something. I don't know. I really don't know what systems I would pick. I think as long as you're kind of using HD, then my system will fold in pretty well. Because my system is very simple, and I can use like BX. Like I can use OSC's got monsters for most of the stuff. It's really would be like, I don't know, something like Shadow Dark. Maybe I have to look. I probably have to get. Is there an SRD or some kind of text only? I don't know. I gotta look at the Shadow Dark angle. I'm not sure it would even be Shadow Dark necessarily, but might be something to look at. And it kind of hit me to that, which is interesting. Let's see. Croco said it works for most cases, but some of your things might be too specific, e.g. put a pit trap versus an elaborate trap. Well, so the thing about the trap was I would explain what it is mechanically. It is a pit trap. It is a pressure plate, whatever. It's not that. I wouldn't just say it is a trap generic. But what I mean is that once I state it's a pit trap, and like it's open or closed, it's a pit trap that's, let's just say this, it's a pit trap that's triggered by a pressure plate in the floor. Okay. Then what I'm saying is that instead of then delving into all the things about what triggers it or not, you don't. That's all you say. It's a pit trap. It's 15 feet deep, triggered by a pressure plate in the floor. Okay. So then what you're doing is you're saying, okay, GMs, I'm trusting that you will just go to your source material, your source book, and whatever rules they have for triggering, whatever they have for that. Is it, like BX? I think it's BX anyway. It's got basically there's a 2 in 6 chance, whatever, or maybe you're running it that like all that stuff. Like I run traps, I telegraph them all. Okay, great. I've told you the traps there. I told you the pressure plate. Now you can telegraph and say, oh, you see the seam on the floor, and you can see that one stone seems a little bit out of place, whatever, right? You like all that stuff. Or I want to have it where they're all open and revealed. Okay, great. Then the pit traps, but me as adventure writer, I've taken myself out of the business of writing out all that stuff and then in triplicate for different systems. Instead, I'm just saying, here's this trap, run it. I'm empowering you. I suppose you could argue, am I empowering you or am I being lazy? Either way, through laziness or guile or, whatever, I'm inviting you to decide how this trap works in your system of choice, whether it be Cairn, Shadow Dark, OSC, blah, 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 blah. Croco says, I guess it works as long as you describe the intent of the trap. Well, it's a pit trap, right? If it has a specific effect, you'll want to write what that effect is, right? You get hit by a giant hammer. But again, if I assume, Croco, if you're playing a game and maybe you're just riffing and whatever, a giant hammer falls, like you can figure out like how much damage does a giant hammer do? How much damage does a two-handed sword? Like, you can kind of figure it out. Like, this is the thing, like, and this is kind of gets to that whole thing that we talked about in a different stream with like the Luke Gehring thing about not giving out plot hooks, right? Is like, how much as a creator, as an author, do you feel comfortable putting on the GMs to like, just figure it out, man? Yeah, it's a pit trap. It's 15 feet deep. You kind of know what that is. Like, okay, 15 feet, like basically 10 feet. Whatever. It's not 20 feet. See, that's 1d6, but we got spikes at the bottom. So we're going to call it 2d6 damage if you fail your save. Boom, boom. Oh, hey, thanks so much. I really appreciate it. You didn't have to do that, but I appreciate it. Thanks. Also says that you could include how to handle the trips in the conversion page. You could, but that might get kind of clunky or just a lot, right? I like the idea because he had it really nicely. It was like one page was just like all your stuff for each system. So there's a little bit of, I'm trying to play in the lines. But yeah, I think again, it's kind of like, it's other elements like, well, who's your audience, right? Let's just take me as an example, okay? For my not even well known enough to be obscure game, my audience is not first time GMs. I can't imagine and I don't even know what dimension I have to travel to. They're like, yeah, your first gaming experience is my game. It's not. Okay. You've probably been around the rodeo a lot before you'd get to my game. So therefore, I would say to you that my audience is not first time GMs, I would say to you actually that my audience is probably pretty experienced GMs. And I would say that go further and say my game is geared towards pretty experienced GMs who like a certain kind of resolution and are looking for something that they can run, that will kind of get out of their way. They can run pretty quickly and easily, but has kind of I think, an easy to understand universal resolution. It's a rules light kind of game, right? Rulings over rules kind of thing. That's who I'm targeting. So I think that for me, I could probably say, listen, you know how to run traps. You've run traps for a million years. I'm telling you the kind of key bits about the trap. And if I was a poor adventure writer and I just didn't do it, you'd figure it out anyway. So I'm just saying, like, and I could even make like in a foreword, here's the stuff that you're not getting. Here's the stuff you're going to need to figure out from your own thing. All right. Other folks might be doing but I'm doing something like Tomb of the Serpent Kings, where my audience is new players and new GMs. Then I would want to do something differently. Whether that's putting in like, hey, here's how you can run these by default. If your system doesn't have a way of running traps, run them like this. That could be one thing to do, right? I could have a whole little front matter or intro that's like, hey, I'm doing these for these different systems. In the absence of something for those systems, here's a quick way to run traps, or here's a quick way to run whatever, right? Croco says, the only worry I would have with that is the design intent getting lost, but then again, stuff is going to get tinkered with anyway. Yeah, I mean, this is where I've come around to. I don't think you can worry about as a GM, as a creator, I don't think it's kind of beyond you. You can't worry about design intent. I don't think you should worry about design intent. I think you just want to put stuff out. I mean, that's kind of so it's similar to like when you're running the game, right? I mentioned how in the game I ran that at ArcaneCon, right? When they go to the boy who wasn't rescued, they go to his house with the parents. Okay. My initial thought of what the player intent is, right, is to go in and get some further information from a kind of a hostile witness, so to speak. Can I treat this witness as hostile? Yes, right, okay. But this group didn't do that, right? But it's not my job to, my job is to go with what their intent becomes, right? So their intent became, let's get this lady out of this horrible situation. And so that's what that encounter became. It might have been intended by me as an investigative kind of crime scene sort of thing, but it turned it out. And that's great. That's awesome. I feel like that's the much more meaningful. I think it made it like very, really meaningful. Okay. And I feel like the same way for the designer intent. As a designer, I can't force you to see what I'm thinking. I'd have to write. You know how much I'd have to write to try to get you into my brain about, this, that, and the other? No. But the cool thing is that what makes it so much fun is when you give it to somebody else and they use the material and they use it successfully, but that whatever success means might be vastly different than what you thought or what you did or what you imagined people would do. They're doing it, right? So you just want to make stuff that will kind of work. And the intent stuff, you can't. It's fun to think about sometimes. Like, geez, I wonder why they did that, right? Like, well, but ultimately, it doesn't matter because people are going to play what they're going to play. They're going to change what they're going to change. Players are going to do all kinds of different things. GMs are going to do all kinds of different things to it. And so, trying to nail down a specific kind of avenue is just counterproductive. It's just it's not gonna work, and you're gonna end up, I think. I don't know. I think you're gonna end up with actually it's gonna be weaker because you try to couple things so tightly that if they don't work as intended, they like shatter. Whereas I want things that are gonna be, that you can form different connections. Like you can go to things in different order. Go here, then go there and go here. It doesn't matter. Like whatever. It doesn't, whatever. You feel it. And like a trap, it's just a trap. Who cares? Did I intend it to be open or closed? Who cares? All that matters is what are you doing at the table? Because it'll work either way. It maybe work differently. Well, it's not a surprise if it's open. No, but now it's open. It's like an obstacle that it wasn't when it was closed, or whatever. Like and by the way, you get both of those because you hand it off to two different GMs. Maybe one of them plays with the surprise part. Maybe one of them plays with it open. Maybe someone else plays with it a whole other way. And so you get this whole, I don't know, of like emergent gaming, right? Everyone just taking your stuff and doing what they will. So I wouldn't worry about the intent myself. I mean, it's one of those things that like easy to say, hard to do, because a lot of this stuff, yeah, it like when I'm thinking about like, do I need to write this in here? Do I not need to write this in here? Do I need to cover this? Do I not need to cover this? Like what is the proper amount of information? How much should I depend on people already knowing? It's stuff that I already know. Someone might be coming from somewhere else. So do I need to explain it to them? And kind of finding that comfort level, which I think is as much as anything is what will you be able to rest if you hand it to somebody without writing some things in there? Then that's what you kind of got to do. Otherwise, it'll be eating away at you that you didn't do it, But I think to the extent that you can kind of leave a lot of that stuff behind and say, hey, people are going to do what they're going to do. And, just go. I think it's what we want to do. That's what I want to do anyway, if I can. But, I'll be honest. I get caught in that too, where I'm like, I think one of the things when I kind of rewrote the player's guide and I sort of redid it is I was able to pare away some of that stuff where I was writing a lot of stuff. But ultimately, I'm like, I don't know if do you need all that? Or is it just me trying to kind of fill something that I like, oh, I think you need to know that stuff. Or it's just like, what, do with it. I'm going to give you the resolution stuff. And if you want to use it a certain way, great. I see all these ways you can use it. I'll show you some, but then it's up to you. If you want to use those, awesome. If you don't, still awesome. Because are you playing it? That's, then yes, then that's it, and then play it how you will. Play it how you will, or how it lies, as they would say in golf, or I suppose Frisbee golf. Whew. All right. Any last words? But I do think I might try the conversion thing. We'll see. I mean, this one, it doesn't have a lot of traps. It doesn't really, I have creatures in there because I tried to make it more of a kind of like a micro setting that you could use beyond the adventure. So I've got more creatures than I need. And a lot of these folk, I stat them up, but you could literally not stat them up because they don't, you're not really, they're not there as, look, you could fight anybody. I'm not going to stop you from all of a sudden just trying to beat down one of these people. So I guess it's good to have them statted up because you never know. But it's not that kind of game. So, yeah, I have all these like water termites, robber flies, ettins, hawks, a grindylow, but they never actually really. They'll never pop up in the adventure unless the party gets, starts running around in the woods for some reason. I suppose they could pop out I didn't roll in the hills for an account. I probably should have done that, but they're pretty focused and everything's kind of close to each other. So I didn't roll for a wandering creature check in the hills, which would pretty much be the only place it would show up. Because otherwise you're on it's pretty set where you're going to. Krako's last words apparently are last words. All right. I don't think, I think that's it. It was a really fun time. I think next year, maybe I'll try to work in both days. Maybe I'll run a game on 2 days. I'm thinking about upping my ante. I guess as a final note for cons and running. I don't want to run too much. My voice, it projects well naturally. I have a loud voice, but I can't, I don't know. I haven't trained myself to be able to do that over a long period of time. So if I'm multiple things in a day doing that, I'll wear my voice out. But if I do like 2 sessions, like kind of 2 mornings, not even, it doesn't have to be morning, but basically 1 session one day, 1 session another day. I think that's fairly doable, especially if I have 2 things to run, which I could, because I could run Escape one day and I could run this another day. I would like to do some things like, I need to get the tools because I like to have some kind of open-ended, like here's some adventures and just kind of rolling with that and like having fun with just like some like random kind of things happening. But I got to get the mechanics and procedures down for that, which I don't know. Krako says it sounds draining. It is draining, but it's a fun, obviously I've been lucky where I've come out of these games feeling really good because everybody had a good time and I had a good time. And the adventures worked in the way that I envisioned them working, right? Pretty much. So you feel really good because you accomplish something, especially when it's like all stuff you did yourself. we forget the system part, but just like this is your adventure that you made. It's always nerve wracking. I was really nervous before I was playing. I was nervous the first time. I was nervous this time. And then you just kind of play it, and it's like everything's working, and the extra pressure of the system part is on top of that for me because I'm trying to get people in the system and how's that working, and then adventure, and right, it's a lot. But when you at the end of it, you just feel really great. Now, I assume that there are times where I'll do one of these things and it will not feel great because I won't feel like I did a good job, or and if the players and everything doesn't like, there's disharmony there, I'm gonna definitely feel like it was my fault. Sometimes I don't think it is. Sometimes I at least feel it's like it's as a GM, it's like you had a bad player, right? It is not your fault. It is their fault. But still, I think you end up taking it on yourself, the GM, that you didn't get that player out of the mix or get them on board or whatever it is. Like I could see it feeling really draining and bad. But so far so good. They've been really good and fun. And I could have never, if I said to myself like, oh yeah, in 3 years you'll be running games at cons, and not only running games, you'll be running your own game with your own adventures at cons, I would have been like, yeah, you're nuts. You are nuts, sir. Nuts. And here we are. So do likewise, everybody. If you feel like it, do it. That's a great way to get back to your cons. And sometimes you get little perks. I feel like some of the cons are really, someone was telling me like, oh yeah, I used to run games for so-and-so, and the amount of hours you had to put in to get like a button from the game, like, oh yeah, I was running, and I don't want to say names of publishers because I don't remember the exact ones, but it was really something like, well, you'd get a free like t-shirt if you ran 20 hours at the con. I'm like, geez, the con's only a couple days and you got to be running 20 hours. It's like, really? I mean, that's just nutso to me. But ultimately, you're kind of giving back to the community. You're allowing people to play. So what could be a finer thing than that? Okay. I think I'm done. I've blathered on long enough. Thanks everybody for hanging out. For those folks who made it all the way through. I don't think I'll be doing anything online tomorrow. It'll be a bit of a travel day, and Veterans Day, I'll be hanging with my familia. But later on in the week, maybe I'll do some work on the Behind the Screens channel, mucking around with this. I haven't put out like a video in a bit, but I have some ideas, so maybe I'll get on that as well. Have a great rest of your day or night, whenever you end up watching or listening to this. Game on, everybody, and I'll talk to you later. Bye now.